Hey, friends, it is Thursday, April 23rd, and this is Mr. Poe talking. What do you mean, was? Mr. Poe asked sternly. Were you fired?
No, Dr. Montgomery. Oh, excuse me.
Stefano turned away and pretended to dab his eyes as if he were too sad to continue, and facing away from Mr. Poe, he gave the orphans a big wink before continuing.
I'm sorry to tell you there's been a horrible accident, Mr. Doe. Dr. Montgomery is dead.
Poe, Mr. Poe said. My name is Poe, but he's dead. That's terrible. What has happened?
Oh, I don't know, Stefano said. It looks like a snake bite to me, but I don't know anything about snakes, and that's why I was going into town to get a doctor. The children seem too upset to be left alone.
He's not taking us to get a doctor, Klaus shouted. He's taking us to Peru.
Oh, do you see what I mean? Stefano said to Mr. Poe, patting Klaus's head. Oh, the children are obviously very distressed. Dr. Montgomery was going to take them to Peru today.
Yes, I know, Mr. Poe said. That's why I hurried over here this morning, to finally bring them their luggage. Now, Klaus, I know that you're confused and upset over this accident, but please try to understand that if Dr. Montgomery is really dead, the expedition is canceled. But, Mr. Poe, Klaus said indignantly. Please, Mr. Poe said, this is a matter for adults to discuss, Klaus. Now, clearly a doctor needs to be called.
Well, why don't you drive up to the house, Stefano said, and I'll take the children to find the doctor.
Jose! Sonny shrieked, which probably meant something like, no way.
Well, why don't we all go to the house, Mr. Poe said, and call for a doctor?
Stefano blinked, and for a second his face grew angry again before he was able to calm himself and answer smoothly.
Well, of course, he said. I should have called earlier. Obviously, I'm not thinking as clearly as you. Now, here, children, get back in the Jeep, and Mr. Poe will follow us.
We're not getting in that car with you, Klaus said firmly.
Oh,
please, Klaus, Mr. Poe said. Try to understand. There has been a serious accident. All other discussions will have to be put aside. The only trouble is, I'm not sure my car will start. Oh, it's very smashed up.
Well, try the ignition,
Stefano said. Mr. Poe nodded and walked back to his car. He sat in the driver's seat, turned the key. The engine made a rough, wet sound. It sounded quite a bit like Mr. Poe's cough, but it did not start. Well, I'm afraid the engine is quite dead, children, Mr. Poe called out. And before long, Stefano muttered to the children, you will be too. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Poe said. Oh, I couldn't hear you. Stefano smiled.
Oh, I said that's too bad. Well, why don't I take the orphans back to the house, and you walk behind us? Well, there isn't room for everyone.
Mr. Poe frowned.
But the children's suitcases are here. I don't want to leave them unattended. Why don't we put the luggage into your car, and the children and I will walk back to the house?
Stefano frowned.
Well, one of the children should ride with me so I won't get lost.
Mr. Poe smiled. Well, I bet you can see the house from here. You won't get lost. Stefano doesn't want us to be alone with you, Violet said, finally speaking up. She had been waiting for the proper moment to make her case. He's afraid that we'll tell you who he really is and what he's really up to. What is she talking about, Mr. Poe asked Stefano.
I have no idea, Mr. Toe,
Stefano replied, shaking his head and looking at Violet fiercely. Violet took a deep breath. This man is not Stefano, she said, pointing at him. He's Count Olaf, and he's here to take us away.
Who am I? Stefano asked. What am I doing?
Mr. Poe looked Stefano up and down and then shook his head. Oh, forgive the children, he said. They are very upset. Count Olaf is a terrible man who tried to steal their money, and the youngsters are very frightened of him.
Do I look like Count Olaf?
Stefano asked, his eyes shining. Well, no, you don't, Mr. Poe said. Count Olaf had one long eyebrow and a clean-shaven face. You have a beard, and if you don't mind me saying so, no eyebrows at all. He shaved his eyebrow, Violet said, and grew a beard. Anyone can see that. And he has a tattoo, Klaus cried. The eye tattoo on his ankle. Look at the tattoo. Mr. Poe looked at Stefano and shrugged apologetically. I'm sorry to ask you this, he said, but the children seem so upset, and before we discuss anything further, I would like to set their minds at ease. Would you mind showing me your ankle?
Oh, I'm happy to,
Stefano said, giving the children a toothy smile. Right or left? Klaus closed his eyes and thought for a second. Left, he said. Stefano placed his left foot on the bumper of Uncle Monty's Jeep, and looking at the Baudelaire orphans with his shiny, shiny eyes, he began to raise the leg of his striped, stained pants. Violet, Klaus, Sonny, and Mr. Poe all kept their eyes on Stefano's ankle. The pant leg went up, like a curtain rising to begin a play, but there was no tattoo of an eye to be seen. The Baudelaire orphans stared at a patch of smooth skin as blank and pale as poor Uncle Monty's face. That's it. So next we'll start chapter 8. And after this, I have a little thing on the circle of fifths to show you. It's kind of neat if you watch it. It's about how you can take the circle of fifths and make any scale you want on a piano. After that, there's some homework help, and then your homework. And remember, if you need any help, you can email me or call me, or go on Google Stream and just go to that page and say, I need help and I want to Zoom. Or we have open Zoom times for 6th and 7th graders, Monday through Friday from 2 o'clock to 2:45 if you want to sit down and do your homework with me. Sound good? Have a nice Thursday. I miss you, and I'll smell you later.